The Vietnam War, April 1975, Saigon. Lyndon Baines Johnson made the agreement to bring all American troops home to the Paris Agreement. There was a lot of U.S. aid into Saigon, and then there was a ceasefire for the Americans, which was great. The Paris Peace Accord was a massive piece of ambiguity. Richard Nixon said the U.S. would respond with full force if anyone broke the Paris Treaty, and then after Nixon resigned, the road to Saigon was opened for the North Vietnamese, and there was a massive shooting in South Vietnam. The city of Hue was rounded up and lined up to be executed, in some cases buried alive, by the North Vietnamese communists. Tons and tons of soldiers and refugees and people of the South gathered in boats and planes because the Americans were gone. The North Vietnam kept pushing the USA's buttons to see if they would react. President Ford was told that North Vietnam violated the Paris Treaty Accord, and then 160,000 troops were moving in. Ho Chi Minh's birthday was the day that they were going to drive into Saigon and attack Binh Dinh. They were bringing SA-2 missiles into South Vietnam, and Ambassador Martin, who was the ambassador for America, said that there didn't need to be an evacuation of Americans in 1975. Ford proposed a $722 million for emergency assistance for South Vietnamese and emergency evacuation for Americans and endangered South Vietnamese to places of safety. The people in the USA did not want to give help to the South, which was one controversy.
Another controversy of the Vietnam War would be when the United States of America intruded into the Vietnam War. Many Americans thought that the United States should not have intruded because we did not want to involve ourselves in foreign affairs.
In 1973, we pulled out all of our troops and brought them home to the United States, and we were not about to send more GIs back. Whenever they came home, they had already been pronounced as baby killers, and that's why the war was a controversy.
Black ops were violating the rules, and many were taken underground and hidden deportations of Vietnam. People were showing up in the Philippines.
April 17, 1975, Can Tho was bombed. Ford wanted to save as many people as he could and wanted to take pride in the honor of America. He didn't want to stab the people of South Vietnam in the back. Congress refused still to pass the $722 million in support for South Vietnam. In the end, any evocation was the Ambassador Graham Martin's final decision. The United States was planning many ways to deport out of South Vietnam in a time of crisis, as the North Vietnamese communists were gathering around South Vietnam and Saigon. The first option was to take commercial ships. The second, commercial aviation. Third, military fixed-wing aviation. And the fourth and last resort was to take helicopters, and there were 75 of them to be rounded up. Saigon was full of rumors that there was fighting in the streets of Saigon, but it hadn't happened yet, so that was another controversy. The plan was to take the ships from Saigon to the Sea of Con Song Island, and soon Saigon's air base was bombed. Saigon was mostly surrounded and gathered by near ports, so this was terrible and detrimental to Saigon, and people needed to get out. The ambassador was holding out because his adopted son died in combat in Vietnam, hoping for some sort of independence, but had to go on for option 4. And said previously, option 4 was to take helicopters out of Saigon and bring them either to the embassy or the Philippines, just to get the United States citizens and South Vietnamese out of there. All Americans needed to either evacuate on boats or in helicopters, with a 24-hour notice by the North Vietnamese.
The Vietnam War ended on April 30th, 1975, and it wasn't until November 13th, 1982 that the Vietnam War was constructed. That was 7 years later. That shows how U.S. troops were not appreciated as much as they should have been.
Caked up.